the administration of the most sacred oath.
It's a day we remember for its words.
I accept it with a resolve to do all that I can.
Oftentimes, words of hope, of unity.
We must pick ourselves up.
Words of promise.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
But what we forget about the history of the inauguration is perhaps just as meaningful.
One of my missions in life is to try to persuade people that these dull and boring aspects of the Constitution aren't really dull and boring at all.
UT law professor Sanford Levinson wants more Americans to question why certain things are the way they are, especially when the answer is because that's the way it's always been. Like why the inauguration is held January 20th.
The potentially most mischievous part of the Constitution.
To understand his argument, we first have to go back to the late 1700s. The Constitution initially created the delay to make sure new governments had enough time to move to the nation's capital in the dead of winter, decades before railroads even existed.
If you're living in Massachusetts, it will take you quite a few days. We don't live in that world anymore.
Presidents 2 through 32, John Adams through Franklin Delano Roosevelt, were inaugurated March 4th, 4 months after being elected. Those 4 months between FDR's election and his inauguration were filled with chaos. The U.S. was in the depth of the Great Depression and on the brink of World War II.
Hoover tried to draw FDR into the decision-making process, and FDR said, no, you're president. I won't be president until March 4th.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
It was then when people realized something had to change. That same year, the 20th Amendment was ratified. Commonly known as the Lame Duck Amendment, it moved Inauguration Day up 6 weeks to January 20th.
Why did they stop at January 20th? Because of the Electoral College.
But Levinson says it shouldn't have stopped there. He says 11 to 12 weeks is still too long. In fact, of the large democratic nations in the world, the U.S. has one of the longest periods between the election and the transfer of power.
We stick with it in part out of sheer thoughtlessness, quite frankly.
My fellow citizens.
Thoughtlessness, he says, that proved to be problematic in 1992.
George H.W. Bush chose to send American troops to Somalia before Bill Clinton's inauguration.
Today, I say to you that the challenges we face are real.
Again, in 2008.
Barack Obama wouldn't take over until January 20th, and we are in the middle of a financial meltdown.
And once again, today.
Every now and then, it matters tremendously. But when it matters, it can actually be dangerous. This is one of those times.